Today's guest is Peter Sandor. With 37 years of experience in advertising and marketing, Peter has had the pleasure of working with some of the world's biggest brands, including Intel, HSBC, Cathay Pacific, Cadbury, Johnson and Johnson, and many, many more. After spending 14 years working in Asia, Peter returned home to Melbourne, Australia, where he worked for leading advertising agency 10 Feet Tall. In 2013, Peter went out solo and launched his own brand strategy agency, Fearless. Expect to learn about the importance of market research, why being in a sea of sameness is detrimental to the long-term growth of your business, what on earth an EVP is, and why brand purpose shouldn't be overlooked. You'll also learn about Peter's 5-step framework on creating sustainable differentiation and clarifying your business's message. This is an episode you don't want to miss, so sit tight and enjoy the pod. Let's welcome Peter. For people in business, especially those that are new to business, when it comes to starting that business, a lot of the time they'll be thinking about, I need to get my website organised, got to get my logo organised. Why is this the wrong way to go about branding?
Well, it's actually the urgent overtaking the important in a lot of cases. What happens to us a lot is that we get a lot of different agencies that we work with where they bring clients to us and say, hey, they haven't got their messaging right. And the time you invest in either advertising or your online work or anything to do with your website, you tend to have the wrong messaging. So it's really important to get your brand strategy right so that you actually have your messaging right and that you're actually doing something that's going to be useful to people that you're trying to reach out to.
Yeah, useful over a visually pleasing aesthetic.
Yeah, well, look, at the end of the day, the thing that happens is that most people are trying to solve the wrong problem too early. They're talking about themselves, and really what they should be doing is thinking about what their target audience needs. And it's too easy to fall into the trap of just saying, oh, look, what's more important, doing a brand strategy and writing a brand story, or getting my website done and, getting some ads done or getting my SEO and SEM sorted. And in fact, a lot of the agencies that we work with will actually do that, and clients likewise will come to us as well for the same thing. But a lot of people will come to us and say, look, we're just not sure we've articulated our message correctly, and that the message that we're sending out to the marketplace is actually going to give us some cut through or even differentiate us from the rest of the pack.
So then what would you define as a brand? Because it's a word a lot of people seem to get mixed up.
Well, there's a lot of confusion sometimes around branding, which is about maybe creating a look and feel and logos, versus brand strategy, which is more about the words than the pictures initially. Sure. And so having a brand is super important because people relate to it, and it takes years to build a good brand, but it can take minutes to burn it down. So you've really got to think with developing a brand, you're actually creating an asset. You're creating something that, if further down the track you want to sell the business or you want to encourage investment, if you've got a brand that is known, you're going to get a lot more for your business. There's a lot more value to be earned there.
Because people are coming to the brand as opposed to the product or the service.
Well, exactly.
Or the price even.
Yeah, exactly. So if you don't have a strong brand and you just have a generic, then it is a race to the bottom. What's the best price, or what's the most convenient, or the quickest that I can get. if you develop a brand and people start to relate to that brand and you have a relationship with your customers, then, you become more trusted and more relevant to them. And I think that's really very important.
Yeah. So you're in the game of brand strategy and brand development.
Yes.
What's the most important aspect then when it comes to that brand strategy and that brand development?
Yeah, I think what needs to happen is that you need to have really good insight into your target audience. And you need to have current insight, because a lot of companies, a lot of consultancies, small businesses even, don't do the research. They believe they know what their customer wants.
Sure.
And so it's really important for them to actually take a deep dive into what the customer's going through at the moment. Because if you understand what their problems are, you can relate to them a lot better than if you just constantly talk about yourself. So most websites will say, here we are, we've done all these wonderful things, we have all these wonderful clients, here's our case studies, read them. It's all about them. It's not about their customer or their client and what they need. So the difference might be that you might ask them a question like, why are you here? Or are you having this problem? And in order to know what their current problems are, and they're changing all the time, the best thing to do is to do the research, to really have some good insight into what's going on. And then once you do that, then you're able to start to develop a bit more of a brand story about how you solve that problem.
So talking about the website copy, what's an example then of a statement or a phrase that could be used on a website that's going to be targeting the customer as opposed to looking in on yourself?
Yeah. Well, so when you land on our website, we'll ask you the question of what's your brand story? Or how well do you know your customers? In the case of an executive coaching client that we have, they ask questions about, has your career peaked? So when you're landing on the website, if that's what it is that's drawn you there, and so they're pattern interrupt questions, and I think that's really important, is that if you're an executive and you're in your 50s and you're male and you know that you've got that sort of male pale and stale syndrome within the organisation, or maybe you're about to be fat 50 and fired. If someone asks you that question, has your career peaked, or are you about to be restructured? Are you going to get the tap on the shoulder? And that's currently in your mind, then immediately you're listening. Yeah. I have your attention because I've asked you a question. And so depending on the business and depending on the problem that they're solving or the pattern interrupt question that they're asking, that can go on to a website landing page which kind of asks that question and then says, why are you here, right? If that's why you're here, we can help. And usually it's followed up with more questions. So it really is all about asking them why they've landed on your website. What do they want? What are they trying to achieve?
I suppose that helps you narrow down your target market, correct? If you're asking those specific questions that are going to appeal to a very specific audience, it's going to be a lot better for you than giving a message that's very broad, very vast.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think the other thing too is it starts a conversation. But yes, absolutely, it can help you to narrow down to the people that you really do want to actually have, your ideal client. So if there's a specific problem that you solve, and you put that problem right up front and you say, hey, is this the problem that you're having? The client immediately feels like, or the customer immediately feels like, oh, well, you understand what I'm going through. Cool. And then there's an opportunity to start a conversation, an opportunity to start to, pique their interest and see how you might be able to help them. So I hope that answers your question.
No, most definitely. Yeah. And it's a good segue, I suppose, into talking about being unique, because you have a saying. I love the saying, is you talk about being in a sea of sameness.
Yes.
A lot of businesses are in a sea of sameness, and you need to become in a sea of one.
Yeah.
So explain a little bit around this saying that you've developed.
Well, I think what happens is that when you are in an industry and you tend to look at the competition all the time and see what they're doing and say, oh, we can do that too, you tend to merge or become just like them. So an example might be the commercial real estate industry. Their websites all look and feel and sound the same. The people that work for them all look and dress the same way. They all drink at the same pubs. They're just very similar. And to the customer or to the client, they're all different in the same way. So they struggle with point of difference. And some people will say, oh, our people are at our point of difference. It doesn't cut it. Every single industry has this thing where what happens is that they tend to look at their competitive set, and by looking at their competitive set, they look more and more like the people that they're trying to compete against. And they make it much harder for their customers to understand why they're different. And it's hard to find a point of difference. So, to become unique, I think what you've got to be doing is solve the problems that the industry isn't solving. So what's the pain point, or what's the issue that maybe your clients are having? They put up with it as par for the course in that particular category or industry set. And they just kind of go, oh, well, that's what happens when you're in this industry. If you can find that, and you can find what that problem is, and you can call it out, then all of a sudden you have a point of difference, because the others aren't calling it out, because they're saying, this is fine, I don't really want to fix that because it costs me money. But if you go, hey, this is the issue, let's face it, that's the elephant in the room, let's call it out. Let's say, are you having problems, or does this really bother you? And if it does, then, that's your opportunity to start to delve deeper into that and find out what the insights are around that, and then bring that to life, bring that out and start talking about it. So call out the problems that the industry has.
Be brave.
And then do something about solving them. And if you look at what's going on in, advertising and marketing awards all around the world, what's happening is that they're awarding and showcasing the companies that actually are trying to solve a problem, a long-standing problem that maybe an industry or a society or a community has had, and they're calling it out and they're saying, we're doing something about it. And that's really a great way to get people to sort of say, hey, there's a different tone and manner to this brand. They have a different mindset, and they want to try and help and fix what's going on in the marketplace.
And does that all come down to being really heavily into your research in the early days of the business?
Look, I think so. I think, make sure that you're not solving the wrong problem. Right? Because if everyone's already solving that problem, then it's going to be hard for you as a new business coming in to actually differentiate or to offer something new. You can say our service is better, or we try harder, or whatever it might well be. But you're not really going to capture it unless you've got, you've got a deep insight into what's going on. And look, I mean, it may sound fundamental, but normally what happens is you start a business because there's a lack in the marketplace. There's a gap that isn't being addressed. The issue that you've got is that as you roll along, other people start to see that gap as well because of what you're doing, and then they start to follow what you're doing. So it's important to constantly innovate and to find new ways of helping your customers get through what they've got to get through. An example might be the wine industry, where right now what's happening, we've got a wine client that is a worldwide distributor of wines. They have wineries. they are looking for new ways to work with their partners so that they can make wine attractive to a new generation. Right. Because right now, if you're thinking about millennials, they don't necessarily find wine that attractive.
Sure.
Or they think of it differently to the way their parents may have thought about wine. And so you've got to build new experiences. You've got to find new experiences. So it's important for this wine company to then say to their audience, hey, we want to work with you to create new experiences that are going to attract this new audience, this millennial audience, and see if we can get them to start to get involved or build a relationship with wine. And so, it's all about relationship, and it's all about creating new ways of bringing things, new innovations. But a lot of it for the industry is a problem. So the people who are running the venues, it's a problem because wine's not attractive for them. So why would I buy it? For the wine company, it's a problem. I'm not selling as much as I need to. For the audience, it's kind of like, well, that's what my dad used to drink, so why would I worry about drinking that? I'm much happier. Sure. But once it's presented as a spritz, or it's wine on tap, or it's a different way of creating a wine experience, then all of a sudden there's a new way of seeing wine, which maybe their parents never saw or never really want to see. But there's a new way of wine presenting itself to the marketplace. And it's the people who start solving that problem early are the ones that are going to differentiate and find new ways. And that's certainly happening in that industry, in the wine and liquor industry. They're certainly headed in that direction.
So then what types of data are you looking for then to dictate? So let's use that wine industry as an example. Yeah. How do they come up with the idea of, let's do wine on tap or wine in a spirits? Yes. Where does that come from?
Okay, so in particular, the company that I'm talking about is Accolade Wines. They won't mind me talking about them. And during COVID, we convinced them to talk to their audience. And, they had done a lot of online research. And online research is a little bit one-dimensional. You know what it's like when you're filling out a form? You want to get to the end of it. Multiple choice questions. It's kind of low level. It's not deep. It doesn't probe to a level where you can really get sort of new insight. And so what we did was during this time, we were talking to people in other countries, and we were doing one-to-one video conference or Zoom interviews, and we were recording those interviews. And we were asking questions around what are the problems that they're having, and if it was Sainsbury's and Tesco's and we were talking to Sainsbury's and Tesco's in the UK and Co-op in the Netherlands, we were getting these senior executives telling us about what problems they were having with the wine industry, what issues they felt weren't being solved. They also talked about where Accolade was falling short. And then we got them to we said to them, it's not a witch hunt, but how could they improve? And they told us a bit about how maybe Diageo or Treasury Wine Estates might be doing a better job. And then what happened was that we asked them about the future and where they saw the wine industry going. Was it an industry in decline, in their opinion, and how they went? And so we got some wonderful answers, and we kept probing. And what was great about that was that the information that we got was a one-to-one. It wasn't a group environment where, if you're going to do all the talking, I'll just sit back and I won't give as much information. We were able to get really deep insight, and we were able to create reports on those insights. And then Accolade's team could go to and visit these clients and say, hey, during the research, you had said these things. Now let's work let's work on these problems together. Let's collaborate. Let's find ways of doing these new things. And in fact, it also stirred up their team internally to come up with new ideas, new ways of presenting wine, whether that be in a supermarket or a shopping centre aisle, or whether that be in a venue of sorts on premise. And so they were able to go back to the client and say, hey, we listened. And that's one of the powerful things about doing this type of research is that the client feels great because they're saying this brand thinks that I'm important enough to listen to me and to listen to what I've got to say. And so by doing that, it was a win-win all round. But what it did was it created this wonderful opportunity for Accolade to go up in the client's estimation. They went right up in the rankings of client satisfaction, and their improvement was astounding, and the team was energised to do something about it. So it changed a lot of things. It helped with the relationship, it helped energise the team, but it also put the brand in a new light in the eyes of the client, because here was a brand that was actually listening and not dictating. Because a lot of brands just dictate the terms. They go, our clients don't know what they want. And that's true. In a lot of cases, there are times when you can bring some new innovation to the marketplace that the client is unaware, or the customer is unaware that they would actually like it. And when they see it, they go, oh, I want this. There are definite instances of that, but I think there's still great work to be done where you can kind of uncover what their issues are. And issues changed during COVID. We had different issues with different clients that needed to be solved. And so I feel like that's where you can actually start to differentiate and you can start to become a little bit more unique. It's hard to be in a category of one. But that innovation comes from bringing things to the marketplace that clients haven't seen before, or is unexpected, or by solving problems that have been around for a long time, but nobody's doing anything about it. And you then come along and say, here's a way that we can solve it.
That's really interesting with the research, because they've asked these hard-hitting questions, or you've asked these hard-hitting questions in this instance, to find out those real pain points and where they can improve as a customer and as a supplier distributor. And they've not only given you those answers to improve the product on that side of things, but they've also improved their relationship with Tesco, with Sainsbury, and improve that client satisfaction there as well. So it's a very positive approach on both ends.
It is. It's definitely a win-win. And I think, most clients will say, we're talking to our clients all the time. Our sales team are out there, and we kind of know what's going on. And I would agree that they have great industry knowledge. But again, because of focusing on competitors, because of what is expected of them, and the relationship that they have with their clients, and sometimes clients can't actually open up. The difference is that we will, as an independent researcher, get a lot more from the client than the sales rep or the CEO will get, because they've got a relationship to maintain. So they're careful in how they work. Certainly some clients are very forthright and they will tell you exactly what the issue is. But often it's great to be able to be in a room with someone who's independent, who doesn't really, it's no big deal to me. Yeah. I'm not here to destroy anything. What I'm looking for is, how can I probe deep enough to get insight that will uncover new opportunities for the client, and then opportunities for them to innovate and say, hey, if this is the problem and it's not being solved, maybe we can create a new product here. And maybe that's when you can become a category of one, because you're the first to recognise that there is an issue that isn't being solved and the industry is too much invested in it. Sure. If you think about what's happened with electric cars, it's a bit like that. the old brands, the old world brands, the Mercedes, the BMWs, whilst they may have had the electric technology, they were invested in an old infrastructure, and they were invested in fossil fuels, and it's very hard for them to walk away from that. So that when someone else comes along and goes, hey, here's an electric car and it does it in a different way, it's a different thing. When you open up the bonnet, there's this little thing there. There's no engine. There's no noise. It changes the game. And I think that that's what it's about nowadays is you may well be in an industry, but how can you change the game? And that's where you need to find your fearless moment or be brave and say, look, we can actually... And it's not always about disruption, but we can actually bring a new or a better product to the fore because we understand what the issues are with our clients and what they're not getting. So, that can be the way forward.
Do you think a lot of businesses have that fear and the lack of bravery to change things and to ask those harder hitting questions in fear of damaging a reputation?
Look, I think the pattern interrupt or hard-hitting questions, as you put it, are questions that make you stand out from the crowd, particularly on social media. So if you're on social media and you think about the world of social media and how crowded it is, and there's just so much information, if I keep telling you how good I am, you'll go, yeah, okay. If some of my clients will tell you how good I am, then okay, yeah, there's lots of people with lots of great reviews. But if you find a way to challenge the industry, challenge the norm, as I say, the advertising awards, like if you think of the Gold Lions for 2024 at Cannes, they're all about companies that have done something that is good, changing an industry for better. They're the ones that are capturing the attention. They're the ones that are winning the awards. Most CEOs will say, well, it's all very good, but we've got a business to run. And it's too easy to just go back into the world that we know. And people are conservative. It's hard to pull them out of their comfort zone. And so often the best way to do it is to start something new, start a new brand, start a new or create a new category within the category that all of a sudden does things differently. And when that happens, then you start to capture new attention. And then everyone else has to follow. You force the issue. It's not so much about disruption, it's more about let's solve the problem that hasn't been solved by the industry. So often, we will go and see CEOs and we'll ask them, what's the most important thing that you do? Some can answer it in a minute. Some can answer it in an hour. But articulating what's the most important thing we do as a brand is super important. And if you can then look at how you can innovate within your brand space, then you can really start to capture some new audiences and new category space where you can be out on your own and be the first in a category, and then you usually become the market leader and everyone else follows. If you're the market leader, you can control the news. All of those things are good. It's just about being brave enough to move into that space. And I think your initial question is very much about, what's holding them back? Why don't they do it? They tend to fall back into what they know works. And they're quite often scared to move into a new space because they don't want to throw away what they've currently got as a livelihood. And we recently worked on some fertiliser brand, and what farmers are doing is that they have a real problem in terms of farmers would love to be doing better. They want to leave the soil in a better way than when they first got it, or when they leave it. For them, it's really important that they do good and they don't take all the goodness out of the soil. So they realise that organic fertiliser product is really good, but it affects their livelihood. So they're not likely to change unless they know that the yield will be the same. For the people who are selling fertiliser, they have a urea that they base it on that is a chemical addiction for the farmers. They need more urea every year, right? And it leaches into the rivers, and whilst it helps them to create a better crop, it also damages the soil. Sure. And so there's a conundrum. And for the fertiliser company, they make money here out of selling chemicals. Why would I change, And for the farmer, they're saying, if I change to organic, I'm not going to get the yield that I get, so I'm not changing so it's got to be a gradual shift. It won't happen overnight, but gradually with hybrid products, they can start to create products that will actually help the farmers to shift to a more organic solution, but will also be able to maintain their livelihood and their yield, because at the end of the day, the farmer is running a business, just the same as anybody else. For the fertiliser company, it's also important that they start to then say, okay, I don't want to wake up one day and be Kodak. I need to start thinking about how I can build hybrid products that farmers will start to take on board. So, that's an example of changing and moving into more value innovation, if you like.
Definitely, yeah. So brand purpose is obviously very important as well when it comes to brand strategy. You have a saying around brand purpose, and I'll read it to you here. In much the same vein as greenwashing, the misuse of purpose for commercial gain stands to reason. Just because a company has a purpose statement or a linkage to their brand, it doesn't mean they're living their purpose. What do you mean by this?
Well, I think, greenwashing, what happened was purpose was kind of, a few years back, it became so important. What good are we doing? How are we helping the planet or the community or the society that we live in? Brands that did good, like Patagonia, really became likeable brands, and they did really well in terms of, people said, I'll pay more for a Patagonia brand because they don't use neoprene in their wetsuits. They use organic rubber, and their product is as good as what I can buy from somewhere else. So Patagonia's stance was very much build the best product and cause no unnecessary harm. So there was very much a shift around purpose is really good. And purpose-driven CEOs became the norm. What purpose have we got? How are we helping? There was a confusion between, we give to a particular charity. That really is social responsibility rather than corporate social responsibility rather than having a purpose. The way Patagonia put it was they really just wanted to, as I say, build the best product and cause no unnecessary harm, but then also get other corporates to help them to save the planet. Now, to a lot of CEOs, a lot of ASX companies, that, sounds like a lot of claptrap, but the new generation that's coming up is very much thinking about, I want to work for a company, I want to buy from brands, and I want to see that these brands are doing good. If they're helping, or if they're organic, or they're planet friendly, or they're contributing to a community or a society, I'm willing to pay a bit more for it. and I'm also loyal to that brand because I can see that's done. So because this wave of noise came through, a lot of people thought, yeah, we need to quickly build a purpose. What's our why? And some of them kind of wrote their whys or their purpose, but then it just gradually fell by the wayside, because when the financial guys or the analysts come into the room, they say the purpose of the business is to make money or to create shareholder value. That's our purpose. Yeah, sure, in the meantime, if we can do good, then that'd be great. But there's definitely a wave of investors now who are saying, what good are we doing? Let's invest in a company that's actually doing good. There's certainly the effect of ESG, or environmental social governance, for CEOs. There's definitely been a shift to doing the right thing. We've still got a long way to go. And unfortunately, they all fall back into the old trap of, well, that's all very good. And if I'm a purpose-driven CEO, but I'm not making money, I'm not going to be a CEO for long. Yeah. So it's about finding the balance. But consumers are aware, if you're greenwashing, you'll get found out. They will, and then they'll destroy your brand on social media very quickly. So you're better off to be absolutely transparent. And if you can do something good, then start doing it, build it into a team of people who come to work every day to say, how can we make the insurance business any better? Do good every day. How can we insure the uninsurable? Find new ways of making insurance more accessible and more equitable. Same with banks. How do we create better financial literacy for our clients? Maybe a purpose for a bank. They need to think about that and then live and breathe that every day. Because when the people go to work at Patagonia, that's what they do. You walk into a store, this stuff oozes out of them. Those kids are there because, we want to save the planet, man. That's their thing. That's really what they want to do. And that's why they work there, not because, they're worried about their pay packet as much, but more so that they feel like they're doing good, and that is super energizing. Of course, the pay packet's important. Everyone's got to survive, but find the balance. And I believe brands like Patagonia, Whistler in the surf industry are certainly doing that.
So those are some examples of really strong brand purpose. What would be an example of a fairly weak brand purpose that you would advise brands to avoid?
Well, I think if someone asks you what's your purpose and you say our purpose is to make money,
sure, that's a weak one.
I think that's where you start to, well, put it this way. If you've got a great product and you can make lots of money out of it, then that's great. And everyone thinks, that's what I'm here to do. I'm in business to make money. I totally agree with that. If you can bring something into that shows that you're willing to give back, then I think you start to head in the right direction. And developing that purpose is often difficult to, I'll use an example of a commercial real estate agent that I worked for, and they said, yeah, purpose is all well and good, but the people who work on the floor here, all the sales reps, they're on commission. Yeah. They're driven by selling, and when they sell, then they get a commission. Sure. They make money out of it. To try and sell them on, hey, how can we make the commercial real estate industry better? It's a little bit tricky. So if you say, maybe our purpose is to try and get homeless people off the street, the people who are in Melbourne CBD, homeless, they're on the street. How can we work better with the right types of charities, the people who are doing really well in this space, and say, these people are in front of our buildings, the buildings that we sell and we lease. They are lying in the doorways of the buildings that we're trying to lease. And why don't we do something about that? Why don't we try and at least contribute to helping those people? And the fallacy is that homeless people just want a roof over their head. They don't. Quite often, they don't want to go into a shelter. So it's a complex solution. Trying to talk that through with someone who's on commission and all they want to be able to do is make enough money to feed their family, there's a distance between that. So I think companies need to think that through. They need to balance. They need to find a way in which their business can be profitable, but their business can also contribute.
Sure.
That's the thing, that the conundrum, if you like, that has to be solved, and businesses are solving it. They're doing stuff about it, there are many examples out there. You've got to try and think about what could be a relevant purpose for your business, and how could you genuinely help, and it has to be genuine. Because if it's not, then again you get accused of greenwashing, and that's not great. Yeah.
So using that example there, commercial real estate, helping the homeless, you touched on corporate social responsibility just before. Yes. And sometimes I think a lot of businesses tend to get purpose and CSR mixed up.
Yeah, definitely.
So using that example there, the brand purpose would be, we're here to remove homelessness from Melbourne streets, as opposed to the corporate social responsibility, which would be, we're donating 10% of our revenue to XYZ charity to help with this cause.
Yeah. Look, it's a difficult thing because for a commercial real estate agency, they've got a bunch of suits that are running around and they're doing what they do. They're trying to sell real estate for their clients, and their clients will say, hey, I want the best price. I want you to sell it at the best time in the market. It's a tricky situation. What needs to happen is you need to embed purpose. It's not a tack on. You can't just tack it on and say, okay, now we're really good. We're getting homeless people off the street. It needs to be, how can we make the industry better? How can the industry, what would be for commercial real estate a way in which a company could contribute or an industry could contribute to making things better? And so that's the way to solve that problem, is to motivate your people to say, hey, I'm happy to come and work with these people because we're doing something about making this industry better. So CSR will always be, and there are 700,000 registered charities in Victoria alone, and they're all asking, they've all got their hand out, and they all go to corporates and say, please, give to my cause. Purpose, I think, where it's true is when you start a business with something in mind. Back to the Patagonia example, what happens is that Patagonia started their business and said, we want to save the planet. That's our purpose. We are here to make sure that the clothing industry that we're involved in isn't wasting water and creating all sorts of pollution, isn't using slave labour to build their stuff. Their advertising comes back and says, don't buy this jacket, we'll fix your old one. Because for us to make this new jacket, we have to use so much water, so much carbon, etc., etc. So purpose is something that's kind of born out of what is a problem. And so we go back to where we started. What's the issue that the industry isn't solving? And then how can you build a company around that or a business around that, then you start with a whole different mindset, because you are trying to make money so that you can create a way to deliver your purpose. And ideally your purpose is your why, and why you do something, and you want to do something good. So starting from a purpose rather than starting from, hey, let's make money. Yeah. It's a tough one, because everybody in business is interested. They go into business because they want to exploit a situation. They want to be able to say, hey, if I give you this, or I build this, then you're going to buy lots of these, and I'm going to make money. You're going to make money because you're going to on-sell it to wherever. Starting with a purpose that says we need to do something about what's going on in a particular space, whether that be mental health, or whether that be, creating new opportunities for people who don't have those opportunities. That's our purpose. Now, how can we find a way to bring that purpose to the fore, so people notice and they do something about it, and let's make money at the same time? People will say, "Oh, isn't that a charity?" Not necessarily. It can be a balance of both. And I'm sure that there are people who would argue in different directions on that, but I just feel that if you start with a purpose, if you focus in on why are you doing what you do, who do you want to help, and why do you want to help them, then it changes the way you think or the way you look at things.
So, Peter, you've got a 5-step framework that you use when you're wanting to create that sustainable differentiation, clarify the messages of brands. The framework is starting with insight research, brand essence, brand positioning, brand value innovation, and then finally communication strategy. Yes. Could you just go through what each of these steps mean?
Sure. The insight research, very much what we were discussing earlier, is to uncover the current industry pain points that need to be solved. The brand essence is very much about your internal DNA. What do we stand for? What's the essence of the brand, but also what's the purpose of the brand? And that allows you to build mission statements and vision statements, but essentially what it asks is, what's the most important thing that you do? Put that into a sentence. Why should I believe you? Or your source of authority is the second part. So what's the most important thing that you do? What's your source of authority? Why should I believe you? What's the thing that makes you capable of doing that? And the third part is your personality and brand archetype. And then all of that, brand archetype being, what type of brand are you? What kind of approach? What's your tone, your manner, your sound, your voice, personality, your values are all mixed in there. And then what happens is it all comes into the middle of your brand essence, and ideally you can bring that to a sentence or a handful of words. Brand positioning, on the other hand, is where do I fit in the world? And this is where you do analyse your competitors, you look for opportunities, what are the parameters for success in your sphere, and how can you differentiate yourself from the competition? And so this is very much about writing a positioning statement, which is, if you like, an elevator pitch. And what we try and do there is we write a short elevator pitch. So you're in the elevator with Darth Vader and you've got 30 seconds to tell him something. And you really have to dispense with the pleasantries. Or you've got a minute or 3 where you can actually start to explain a little bit about what you do. And again, it's about creating some sort of hook point or intrigue but also something that makes you sound different. So, O'Brien Real Estate says our people are the difference, and you kind of go, well, really? Yeah, it is. Okay. So if I've got a good real estate agent and it's not an O'Brien real estate agent, but he's a good person, then how can it be your difference? Yeah. So you need to find ways in which you can differentiate better, and that's what brand positioning is all about, is going through that exploration and taking a deep dive into competitors, understanding what are their strengths, their weaknesses, what are their similarities and differences, and what's their tone, and how can you find a better way to something that they're not saying. So it's very much, if brand essence is internal DNA, brand positioning is where do we fit in the world. And then brand value innovation is really about saying where's the blue ocean, where can we swim into a blue ocean. And brand value innovation is very much about what can I bring to the marketplace that the market hasn't seen before, or hasn't, it hasn't been expressed this way, or it's a new something. It's a new way of making this industry more equitable, or a new way of doing something that people haven't seen before. And so this is a great exercise in terms of creating a strategy canvas and looking at where you differ from where the industry norm is. Sure. So if the industry is zigging, can you zag? Is there a way in which you can go into a different space which is away from what the industry expects? So whilst brand positioning is very much a deep dive into your competitors, brand value innovation says it doesn't matter what the competitors are doing. What can we do to change? What can we do to bring new value to the market that the market hasn't heard before? And what's that innovation? What's the value innovation that we bring? And I think that describes the third part. And it's a great exercise where you do a 4 questions framework in terms of what you eliminate, raise, create, etc. And then the last part, the ComStrat, is really all about what can we do to make the buying decision easier? How can we bring this message to market and communicate it in a believable way? And quite often, I said earlier that when we work with other agencies, quite often other agencies will write the ComStrat, or other consultants will that bring us in to do the brand piece, the brand workshops. But the workshops are really about uncovering information gaps. And then the ComStrat is really about creating the message that can be delivered at a time when the target audience is most receptive to hearing it. So that means they need it now. They might not know that they need it now, and we're delivering it in a timely fashion. So very much about what will make the buying decision easier.
So let's say I'm opening up a new ice cream store.
Yes.
How would we begin working through these 5 steps to build that brand development and strategy?
Well, I did this in Indonesia for Unilever for their Walls ice cream brand. And what we did was we were trying to introduce paddle pop into Indonesia, where they have this thing that during rainy season, if you eat ice cream, you get the heaties, which is like the flu or a cold. And so we were introducing ice cream into a country that wasn't quite used to having ice cream. So what we did was we got a whole bunch of Indonesian kids in the room, and there was a lady called Candy who moderated these groups. And we talked to them about ice cream. We shared some ice cream with them. They tasted it. We filmed it. We tried to understand what was going on. What was this relationship, this indulgence, this escape that was happening when I bite into an ice cream? What was I getting out of it? And then from there, what we were able to do is to start to look at, what was the essence of this brand? How can we position it differently to the other ice treats that were available? And then, what they did was they looked at how can we also bring in not just kids. So the value innovation that they created was that they brought in a durian ice cream. Now, durian is very popular if you're in Asia. Most people from Australia or from other countries in the world that are not surrounding Asian countries, the smell of durian is really, whoa, it's not immediately, and so it's an acquired taste, and it's not something that I was very interested in. So I was brought along to a meeting where they were talking about this new durian ice cream that we were about to launch, and they said it was actually a durian cornetto, and of course I ate one, and I felt like I had the durian taste in my mouth for the next couple of days. Now, it wasn't something that was very pleasant to me, but for the local market, it was fantastic. And so what we soon learnt was that, international copy wasn't always the right thing. It was a window to the world for Indonesians, but if we were able to bring it to a local level where it was about local insight and it was about local things that were accepted locally, the whole world changed. They then said, okay, this is great. I can eat this ice cream. It tastes great. So that's an example of what we would do. Now, any new company coming into the marketplace, I would urge them to make sure that they really understand what the market needs and how they fit, and then use a process like the one we have to create a way to articulate their point of difference, articulate their purpose and their brand essence, and find new ways of innovating in the way that they deliver this news to the marketplace, so the people will sit up and take notice. There's a hook point there. There's something different. I haven't heard this before. Because if I say to you, here's 5 things you need to do before you sell your house, you'll probably go, I've heard that before. Yeah.
Everyone says the same thing.
Everyone says the same thing, and that's, again, sea of sameness. But if I find a new way to kind of attract you by asking you a pattern interrupt question that stops you in your tracks or hits you in the heart and says, yeah, wait, there should be something done about this, then you have a new way of starting a conversation, and that's what it's all about. Start a conversation, build a relationship, and then the brand starts to come to life.
Is this an easier framework to introduce as a new business versus an established business? Is it harder for established businesses to change their brand differentiation and their brand strategy?
It works with both. I think with a new brand, it's a wonderful place to start, because if you can build a brand story, you immediately have a new asset that the business has, and it has some value, but it also gets everybody, as you start to bring new people into the business, they understand and believe in, the purpose, the system that you guys bring, the belief system that you guys bring. So as a new business, you come with something new, you have a belief system, and that belief system is something that I want to work there because I feel like this is a good thing to do. For an existing business, it's a really good refresher, because what happens is that when you work in the same industry or same business for a long, long time, you know the business, so there's no need to change. It's always worked this way. Yeah. We've always spoken this way. We've always sounded this way. And as a result, you end up in a sea of sameness with everyone else in the industry sounds the same as you. And the consumer is, well, which one's the best price or which one's the most convenient? In order to capture that opportunity and to look at a new way or to build a new brand language for an existing business, this process actually gives them a bit of a shake-up. And if you start with some key insights that maybe they're overlooking and highlight some of the industry problems that aren't being solved, and you get the right people in the room, they all own the strategy. So if the board members or the ELT, the executive leadership team, are all in here and they go through this process and they all get to talk about it, they own the strategy as a group, and they can then allow that to permeate through the rest of the organisation, because each department head or each board member brings that same noise, that same message.
Lead by example to the ones below them.
Yeah, but it's about, if you like, reinvigorating your brand language. So for existing companies that we've worked with who have been around for a long time, it's a way of refreshing their brand language. And it means that when the CEO is talking to a large group of people, or a rep is talking to a customer, or someone in the social media team is writing a post or a blog or a white paper is out there, there's a consistent brand language. And great brands are consistent and enduring. They usually stand for one thing over long periods of time. And if you can capture that in with a new voice, this process is wonderful for doing that. And we get, when we do this with companies, most of the time the people who are in the sessions come to me and say, this is fantastic, because it gives them a new lease of life. And everyone owns the strategy, and there's if you like, they're re-energised. And sometimes brands need to be re-energised and to, remember what their purpose, their essence is. And positioning can change depending on what's going on in the marketplace, and value innovation gives them a whole new lease of life, maybe a new category opportunity that they can bring.
It's good to know that it's not all doom and gloom then. You do have a chance to start afresh and to find new gaps in your market by doing these exercises and following this framework. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think, you have to ask the question, why aren't customers buying, or why aren't customers doing what, So, we can talk about marketing and brand strategy, but why aren't people jumping in? Yeah. What's the block? So for us, we have to keep digging on what's the apprehension. Why aren't you coming along? And is it ROI? Is it measurement of what we do? For most businesses, what they're doing, especially smaller consultancies and smaller SMEs, they're looking for return on investment. They're saying, if I give you some money for marketing, I want to make sure that I'm going to get some money back. I want the marketing to pay for itself and some. I want to see that if I'm going to do a boost on LinkedIn of a post, that I'm actually going to get 160,000 impressions, and that it's going to create new engagement. That's what everyone's looking for. So if everyone looks and sounds the same, it's hard to get people to notice you, because they kind of go, I've heard that before. But if I'm giving you something that's different, if I'm finding a new hook point, if I'm finding a new way of reaching out to you, then a new conversation starts, a new interest starts. So there is definitely hope for existing organisations and new organisations that are coming into crowded spaces.
One of my favourite LinkedIn posts that you've developed, it's a satirical article headline. Managing director smiles and nods whilst frantically Googling what EVP stands for. Right. Well, we spoke about this, or you spoke about this at a Business Value Partners presentation, and I think everyone in there was also frantically Googling what is an EVP. So what is an EVP?
Well, just to take a step back, a lot of jargon happens, and I don't like jargon, but a value proposition, is so important to a business to make sure that it's right. And what you've got is you've got this thing going on where there's so much jargon, and there's so much, there's acronyms, and I don't like them. I think what we're trying to do there, what we're trying to do with that post, is to sort of say, there's new ways of looking at things, but at the end of the day, everyone has to be quite human, and they have to, find a way in which they can get. And EVP stands for Employee Value Proposition, and what that's about is that while CEOs sometimes are busy making money, they forget about the employee value proposition. And the employee value proposition goes back into purpose, where if you've got a great purpose and I'm going to come and work for you because there's a great group of people, and we're all trying to do something that is going to eventually be good, or we're all going to learn from, or it's going to help the businesses that we work with. You can build that into an employee value proposition, which helps you to hire the best people, or to attract the best people, and to retain the staff that are there. They kind of go, yeah, that's right, that's why we're here. We have this purpose as a group, as a team, and it's written into an employee value proposition that when I'm interviewing you and saying, hey, come and join this tribe of mine and let's do something good, that sounds a whole lot like what you want to do, then people will jump in, and they'll jump in and they'll stay. And look, a lot of companies are thinking about their employee value proposition. A lot of HR, or chief people officers in big organisations are thinking about ways in which they can retain their people and excite them, because the new generation moves on pretty quick. Being in a job for 2 years and they're bored, they're out. And being in a job for 2 years is long nowadays. On your resume, it's okay. People will come into your business. They expect to see that you're living up to your EVP or your employee value proposition, and people will try and sort of, particularly the new generation, the younger generation, that builds energy into your team, that brings new ideas into your team, that calls bullshit when it's bullshit, right? They're the people you want, and you're not going to get them unless you've got a really good EVP or employee value proposition. And some CEOs don't think about that. They just think about the grind, and that's why we're trying to be a bit, it's a bit of satire there.
Yeah. Goes to show how important it is to have your brand purpose, not just for your customers and your guiding line for your business, but you also need that for your staff so that they can be a part of that brand purpose as well.
It's super important to bring people along, and again, that is the process that we take you through will build a brand story. It'll build a new brand language, but it's so important that permeates the whole organisation, that you share that vision, that brand purpose with everybody in the team, and give them, translate that into an employee value proposition that is meaningful and will keep your team excited about it and say, yes, I want to be a part of that. I think that's worthwhile. Yeah. That's a worthwhile thing to do.
So what trends can you see shaping up in brand strategy and communication in the future? And how are you and Fearless going to deal with those trends?
Well, I think the trend very much is what I was talking about earlier about advertising awards, and it's a bit cliche sometimes, and I know industries give themselves awards, and you kind of go, yeah, you're patting yourself on the back, and why do you need to have an award to? But the reality is that in the marketing and advertising business, awards are the lifeblood of agencies, and the agencies that win awards are usually the most profitable, and clients also like it. Sure. But I believe, and so the trend that comes from that is that, again, the Cannes Lions and the other awards that you'll find are all focusing on companies that are doing good, that are bringing something new into the marketplace that is maybe helping diabetics or finding new ways of solving medical issues or mental health issues, or finding new ways to making society more equitable, or finding new ways to bring new communities to life that are helping people to deal with everyday life. And it's, sometimes we take things for granted about how good a life we've actually got, and particularly in Australia. We live in what is a very wealthy country compared to what poverty exists in other countries. I'm sure we complain about tax, and we complain about governments don't help anything to help new businesses or small businesses to really get up off the ground. So I think the trend is very much about what problem are you solving, and it's not just about, I'm helping to mow lawns, so I'm going to neaten gardens, I'm going to cut the grass. The problem I'm solving is that emotionally, the guy who would have cut the grass doesn't have to do it, and he gets a longer weekend because he's not cutting his own lawns. Probably a bad example, but at the end of the day, the future is about solving problems, bringing in new ways of doing things that are going to be more efficient, better for the environment, and better for communities and societies. Brands that take that challenge up and they say, hey, we're an industry, what good are we doing? How can we improve an industry? What are the things that this industry could genuinely contribute to a community or a society to help improve? It doesn't always have to be about, changing the world. Imagine if banks were more interested in making sure that you paid your loan off quicker, and not say, oh, look, we're going to give you an early exit fee, or saying, I'm going to charge you at every step of the way. Maybe banks could be helping people to become more financially literate, to find new ways of improving their wealth, and do that as it's incumbent on them, not just make really large profits and say, now we have to get our PR company in to sort of say, how can we talk about our profits this year, which Telstra used to do. I think they still do. Banks do it all the time. The profit announcement. We've made a lot of money again this year, right? Great for shareholders. Great for shareholder value. And if you've got Commonwealth Bank shares, terrific. We've made millions of dollars, great, or billions of dollars. And that's fantastic. That means my share price has gone up. Fantastic. Give a bit back. And I think that that's where the trend is. And as much as, the financial guys, the guys that will say the purpose of the business is to make money, as much as they try and resist that, it's coming for them. It's the companies that do good. It's the companies that find ways of contributing back, and not just greenwashing. They're going to win, and they're winning the awards because they're the things that are happening. And then, of course, in the value innovation space, it's very much about what new value can I bring? If I look at the problem that you've got, how can I fix that problem? How can I solve it for you? How can I make it easier for you? And I think that if you can create case studies around how you've made it easier for people, to live or to have a better life, and help them to cause less harm to the planet or to an environment, then I think you're starting to get somewhere. And I think it's incumbent on everybody in advertising, marketing, brand strategy. It all molds into one. Find new ways of getting your customers or your clients to do good, to bring something good to the party, and bring new innovations that are going to make life better. If we can get less pollution in the air because we've got more hybrid cars in Australia, fantastic. That's great. If we're using less fossil fuels, fantastic. If Australia can start to say, hey, maybe the government can do stuff about not so much their own agenda, but actually say, why don't we run the country like a business? Let's not give away our most competitive advantages. Like, why would Australians have to pay for gas? Why do we give it away to other countries and they sell it back to us at a premium, and people who want to use natural gas, they can't afford it, right? They need help. Why would we do that? Why can't we help people? So we should be a country where we're mineral rich. We should be able to do things so that people shouldn't have to pay high prices for energy.
Sure.
We shouldn't be paying as higher taxes. We should be making more money as a country. I think they're the trends that are going to come, and I think old parties that are focused on their own agendas are going to be out of date soon. And I think companies that are focused on their own agenda, likewise, will find that this new generation that is very much focused on environment and changing the way we do things for the better, I think companies have to sit up and take notice. For now, the money's with the baby boomers. They've got it, but that's all going to shift. And as it does, this next generation underneath will come through and say, "What good are you doing?" And I think that's the trend. Find new ways of doing things better.
Peter, as we finish up this morning, I'm going to ask you two very short and sharp questions.
Yes.
The first is, what is the biggest lesson that you've learnt over your career? And then the second question will be, what is your number one tip for people new to marketing, new to branding, and where that tip can take them going forward?
Well, I think, what I would say to you is the biggest lesson is that, when I was in my 20s, I thought I knew everything. Now I'm in my 60s and I realise I've got a lot to learn. And I think that's probably the lesson, that you never stop learning, and you never stop improving. And I think if you're new into marketing, I think you should, bring new ways, constantly look at new ways of bringing new things into marketing, new ways of doing it. Call out your clients' problems. Be brave. Be fearless. Go and and that goes for clients too. Find new ways of doing things that are going to make you stand out from the crowd. And yes, you'll be out of your comfort zone. Undoubted, you'll be out of your comfort zone. But that's what makes it worthwhile. The more out of your comfort zone you are, the less you know about what you're going to do next. Almost that's the better. Yeah. Be brave.
Peter, thank you so much for everything this morning. It's been so insightful, learning of your 5-step framework, the importance of brand purpose, and really diving into that research and finding out what it is that you can differentiate in your own strategy and your communication to become a C1. So thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Didier.